I am very pleased to be joining three very interesting and honorable individuals who are going to give you their perspectives of bridging police-community relations. I'm going to moderate, which means basically that after they give you their views and perspectives, I'm going to reach out to you. We hope to have a very lively and interesting dialogue. You will ask questions. I will try to keep us on time. I know that this is a very important topic and people feel very passionate about this. We all do. And I was told that we have until 4, but depending on how things are, we might finish a little bit earlier. But again, let's have something constructive out of this. So what I'm going to ask of all of you is, let's maybe take it away from a very personal experience that some of us might have, a perspective on policing based on what happened to us, and maybe take it to slightly larger community-oriented perspective, so we can have something that we can take out from this that doesn't translate to an individual grievance, but can be sort of replicated, and maybe lessons can be learned for others from what we have here. Okay, thank you very much. I will allow the participants of the panel to introduce themselves, and I will start with Inspector Griffith to my left.
Hey, thank you so much. Thank you guys for having me here, John Jay. My name is Inspector Stephen Griffith. I've been with the New York City Police Department for 22 years. Can't believe it, but 22 years. You know, I am a child of the city, born and raised in Brooklyn, Flatbush. Right now, I serve as commanding officer of citywide outreach for community affairs. I work for Chief Joanne Jaffe. And a description of my job, basically, I go out there and we try with my team to form relationships with different aspects of the city, whether it be schools, religious leaders, private corporation, and just people in general. So we do respond to major incidents, but we do a lot of things behind the scenes. I know a lot of you guys see our rock walls up at the different events. We do a lot of things with young people, you know, and that's really a lot of our focus is to the young people, because realistically, you guys are here. You guys are going to be the ones that take on the reins. Some of you guys are going to be police officers. You don't even know it yet. You know, some of you guys are going to be city officials. You know, some of you guys are going to be in business world, private world. And I had the opportunity of working with all those different type of people, you know, and one of the things that I've learned is that, you know, everyone wants to help, and they see this is an important issue in today, policing, whether it be in New York City or around the country or even around the world, as a big issue in regards to the communities that they police and some of the misconceptions and mistrust that we have in these communities. So it's a very important topic. You know, it's something that I deal with all the time, you know, and I'll tell you off the fact, and I'll tell you, I know the cameras are rolling. We make mistakes in NYPD, you know. There have been mistakes that I've made, you know, and we're going to continue. It's the nature of policing that you're going to make mistakes. You know, I talk to young police officers. Before I had this job, I was a commanding officer of the 26th Precinct, which is the west side of Harlem. And one of the issues that we dealt with young people, and we had the friction going on between Manhattanville and Grand Houses, where there was a friction back and forth and involved a lot of young people, and it did, from time to time, turn violent. You know, in our job, we had to engage these people and try to find better alternatives for these young people so they wouldn't lose their lives and wouldn't get caught up. So I do understand how vital that is, you know, but when you do engage in these things as police officers, you know, you can make mistakes or things can happen, you know, and I understood that the only way that I can achieve anything is with the help of the community. You know, if I didn't gain any type of consensus in the community and all the different posts that I've worked in my 22 years, it was hard to get anything done. So maybe that's why they put me in this position. But it's just something that we have to do. I think these forums that I go to, especially here when I'm talking in front of young people, especially I look into the eyes of you young people, you guys are going to be running this world soon. You know, you guys are going to be the ones that are going to be making the decisions going forward in the next 5 or 10 years. So hopefully I can, you know, impart on you some of the things that we do. You know, there is a lot of misconceptions out there about policing and what's going on. You know, and unfortunately, snapshots. today we see things in snapshots. We turn on Twitter, we see something, and we form our opinions. And unfortunately, those, when you look at it and when you go back over it, those stories, they only tell a part of what's going on. And sometimes the police officer is wrong. If he's wrong or she's wrong, they have to deal with the consequences. But sometimes there aren't. And we need to be able to build that relationships. And what I try to do with my police officers, we try to build those relationships so when things happen, we can go out into the community and we can speak to people and we can know, who we need to speak to, because I can respond to an incident where a police officer is involved in a shooting. And sometimes in those first crucial minutes, rumors can take off. And that can lead to, an explosive situation. So my job is to build those relationships, even in places like this, where I can reach out to people in different communities and say, this is what we have, this is what's going on, and we're going to try to get you more information as it becomes available. And that's some of the things that we do. So I'm going to pass the microphone on, but I'm very happy to be here. It's very critical that we keep having these discussions, because the more we have these discussions, the more we don't have what we see happen around the country. So thank you for having me here.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Frank Williams. I'm a lieutenant with the Jersey City Police Department right across the river there. See New York City every day. I work in community relations, and my perspective coming here today is from the Police Athletic League and working with the youth the last 10 years. And, just to piggyback on what the inspector said was, working with the community is crucial to get anything done. And we see our best work and our best outcomes when the community is involved. And, working with the youth has been my pride in the last 10 years, since about almost 11 years, since about 2005. So I'm looking forward to answer questions, and I'm certainly definitely looking forward to, going back and bringing back some new ideas and be able to implement them back in my community. Thank you.
I also want to say thank you for having me. I'm Senior Investigator Ali McBride. I work with the New Jersey Department of Corrections, Special Investigations Division, Fugitive Unit. I've been detailed to the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force for the last 10 years. Next month I'll have 20 years in law enforcement. But I think what I bring that's unique to this discussion is that I've always been involved in community service with regard to different programs I put on. I'm a coordinator for the African Echoes organization in Newark, New Jersey. We're responsible for creating a school of sorts. Freedom School, we used to call them Freedom Schools back in the day. But it's called Sankofa Circle, where we teach an African history class, 5 Saturdays, the first part and the last part of the year. And we've been doing that. African Echoes has been in existence for close to 35 years. And I've been involved with that organization since I was 18 years old. So I bring a pretty unique perspective, considering that I've been in law enforcement and I've risen in law enforcement, but I've also been very, very, very closely working with the community that I was raised in. Again, I'm here to answer any questions, and hopefully, and I'm just judging from listening to the other panelists, this is going to be pretty interesting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So just a quick word about myself. I was a police officer in Israel. I was a lieutenant in the Israeli police and came here to serve in the office of Israeli police representative many, many years ago. But eventually chose the academic career, and I've been a professor at John Jay for almost 20 years in the Department of Law and Police Science. I study police community relations in the United States and around the world. I view policing as a profession that transcends cultures and continents and backgrounds of people. I think there is much to be done about policing in many, many countries. At the same time, I am the biggest, I guess, defender of the profession, in the sense that I understand the impediments that the professionals engaged in this profession are facing on a daily basis. And I think that there is nothing more important than a forum like we have here today, where we have the opportunity to meet people from one side, the law enforcement side, together with the people from community, the students of John Jay representing a myriad of backgrounds, and start talking about what it is that needs to be approached, what it is that needs to be done. And I would like, actually, just listening to the panelists, to pick up on some things that they have said and maybe throw it back at you and ask you if you would like to pick up the theme and talk about it. So Inspector Griffith said, sometimes we make mistakes, right? Sometimes we make mistakes, and in any profession, we do make mistakes. But for whatever reason, what I'm seeing over the last 30 years studying policing, a mistake in law enforcement has consequences above and beyond a mistake in any other profession. So if this is something that any of you would like to start the discussion about and to ask, maybe, don't know, state your own opinion about this, why is it that one mistake in law enforcement has such tremendous consequences and repercussions and basically labels the entire profession? Inspector Griffith and I spoke before the meeting today, and he asked me, did you see what this deputy sheriff has done to this girl in school somewhere? Where was it? In South Carolina. He grabbed her, and I said, yes, of course I saw it. And I said, here we go again, to revalidate, a perception that people have that law enforcement, it's all about brutality, it's all about excessive use of force, yet it was one police officer out of 800,000. So I open it up to you. Professor John Brown. Oh.
Good afternoon. I want to thank the panelists for being with us today. I'm Dr. Dolores Jones Brown in the Department of Law, Police Science, and Criminal Justice Administration. Say that fast 3 times. And I'm the director of the Center on Race, Crime, and Justice. For each of the panelists, I'd like you to take on this notion about mistakes and, the mistakes of the few police show negatively on the rest of the police, the same way that mistakes or crime in the black community becomes the black community writ large. So there's been a discussion, or there's an attempt to have a discussion about Black Lives Matter and about the excessive use of force that we've seen on video in some instances. And people are trying to shift that discussion to a discussion of black on black crime. And so it means that we can't have the real discussion. The police are given a lot of responsibility and authority. One of our South African visitors say the police get to engage in the asymmetrical use of force, right? So you can use more force than the rest of us are permitted to use. So specifically, if each of you could tell me how your department is sort of dealing with, or what it's doing to try to bridge the divide between the Black and Latino community and the police department, because most often those are the communities on the receiving end of use of force, whether it's excessive or legitimate. And it is the point where we circled back to, I'm old enough to remember, when every riot that took place in the United States was because of a police incident, and now we've circled back to that position. So what is each of your departments doing to move us out of that space where people are rioting and protesting because of the police treatment of racial and ethnic minorities?
Great question. First, I want to just put out there, unfortunately, we all, no matter who we are, we live under perceptions that people have. So whether we're a black person, whether we're a police officer, whether we're a woman, whether we're Muslim, there are always perceptions that people have, and unfortunately, we carry. So, and sometimes those perceptions lead people to have, depending on our actions, they judge us too quickly or right away. Just to speak about that. Now, as far as what the NYPD are doing, I think NYPD are doing a lot of things. We understand, what's happened in New York City and what's happened around the country. This is a very important issue. How do we deal and how do we engage communities that have felt that, the police department haven't really been our friend. They've really just been here to keep us in check. And that is the feeling, and as a black man, growing up in Brooklyn, growing up in the 80s, I've had my experiences with police. Overall, I've had good experiences, but there's been some experience where, I said, man, that wasn't right, and I think maybe that's what spurred me, like I said, I didn't know I wanted to be a police officer, but, it probably spurred me into wanting to be in law enforcement, to have a better understanding, and to do something that I thought was worthwhile in my community. But, we do have a lot of initiatives, that we're doing, and the new police commissioner is doing, Bill Braden. Some of it, we have this NCO program where basically we're taking a lot of the police. A lot of the complaints have been that we don't see the same police officers all the time. Police officers come and go. You have these armies of cops that come, they call impact, and they're new, they don't know anybody, they stand there like wooden soldiers, and they're too quick to jump on top of us. Whereas back in the days where we had Officer Smith that everyone knew. So I think they took heart to that. Phil Banks, that was here before, and the new police commissioner, and they decided that, what, we need to get the police officers, the one with more time, out of the cars and make them more accountable to the communities that they work in. So in this new NCO program, they've designated officers, the officers that ride patrol. They're going to, part of their tour, they're going to get out the cars and they're going to respond and they're going to address community concerns. And it could be little things as noise complaints to, big things as robbery patterns. But those same police officers are going to be doing it time in and time out. So if you live in the 3-4 precinct in Washington Heights and you have a lot of quality of life complaints about noise, you're going to know Officer Rodriguez and Officer Brown, because those are going to be the same officers. You're going to be able to develop that relationship. You're going to pass your numbers on to each other, and you're going to stay in contact with each other. So you put a face behind that shield of NYPD. We want to make it more personal, where people know these officers, and these officers can be held accountable. Because sometimes, like any big bureaucracy, you could walk into a New York City police precinct, and it's just wait here, there, boom, 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 and you spin around. You felt like you got nothing done, and you've been there for 2 hours. So hopefully with these new initiatives that they're doing, they're going to be able to bring face to it. Another thing that they're doing, they're working with local leaders. And what I mean by local leaders, pastors, business workers, activists, and they're getting them to partner up and speak to our new officers as they come out the academy, and actually partner up with the officers that are already there, a dress roll call. Walk around with them on patrol. So if you go up 125th Street, you're going to see some of the people. If you live on 125th Street, you'll know Vernon Williams. You'll know Willie Walker. You'll know some of those personalities, and they're going to walk the beat with our new officers, and they're going to be able to integrate them with the community at large. And that's some of the things that we're doing. So you're going to be able to say, Willie, I have a problem, and, I don't know how to go into the 2A precinct. I don't feel comfortable. So they'll be able to take you in there and help you. So those are some of the programs that we're hoping to do. And I'm hoping that you young people that are here, that are, like I said, you guys are going to be the future leaders here. Some of you guys might be a police commissioner or a city council member. You guys are going to make laws that me as a police commander is going to have to follow. So hopefully you guys are going to be able to give some insights and to become some of those young ambassadors to some of the other young people, because, we do have problems out there. We had an incident yesterday that I know everybody knows about, the shooting in Brooklyn, right across the street from the college. If you're from Brooklyn, Flatbush and DeKalb, very busy area, right across the street from Long Island, the college, and a young man lost his life there in a shootout at 6 o'clock. At 6 o'clock, Flatbush Avenue is bustling with people. And once again, it's young people versus young people. So we need these young ambassadors, people that live in these different communities, to partner up with us and to go out and reach out to our other young brothers and sisters. All right. Sorry I took too long.
Thank you. All right, so get right to the meat of it. Trying to bridge that gap there from a community relations perspective and my perspective in working, and now as a lieutenant on the evening tour, which is one of the busiest tours for calls of service. I had the great distinction, I'm looking at it positively, to get some 32 rookies all at once, graduate in June, and get handed to me and say, okay, go out there and let them go patrol. And by the way, we want them on walking post only. All right? That's tough. But if you look at it positively, I get the new kids right out of the academy. They're still saying sir. They're still wearing their uniforms very sharp. So I get to kind of mold them in the right direction. So to give you a brief little bit of a history, walking posts, I believe in the walking post. I believe in the good that comes out of a walking post. But walking posts historically was sometimes, and the inspector will tell you, was a punishment, was considered a punishment. You were in the car, and you came in. So you're kind of trying to get that. So when you get a rookie coming out and they go on a walking post, he might get an older police officer say, you know, it's going to stink, it's going to be this and that. And so what I'm trying to tell you, it starts with leadership with these new guys and getting these things involved and working with the community. So you take the kids aside and you show them how to do a meet and greet, okay? Because what I tell them is this: you want to treat the community like you want me to supervise you. And I'll give you an example. How would you like it if anytime I only spoke to you was when you did something wrong? Anytime you did something wrong, I only pointed it out, and I never pointed out anything positive you did. You wouldn't like me very much. It'll go downhill real fast. So that's how I tell them to do their meet and greets. Go out there, go to the stores, say hello, give them your first name. Let them know who you are. Talk with them. Have a coffee with them. Little simple things like this, because I'll give you an example. I don't have the matrix. I don't have the numbers to tell you, but I can tell you that since June, I've handled less complaints, community complaints against the officers, okay? In fact, there was an arrest that was being made, and the family came in, and they wanted to sign excessive force complaints against the officers. The mother and the brother came in to sign this complaint. I can tell you 10 people from the community came in and said, no, there was not excessive force. And they came into bat for the officer, Jason, by his first name. Not that cop that was in uniform. And they came in and they go, no. Jason was standing there. He was doing nothing. He was talking with us. This guy wouldn't leave. We've called for service, you know, and won't get into more particular details. At that point, you know, the arrest got rough. It came in, and it worked out. And it's simple. I don't think there's a great, you know, scientific formula that needs to be, you know, developed, okay? I think it's simple. Once the people know who you are, okay, they come back to you with information. Once the people know who you are, then there's no question about when you have to, you know, regulate, you know, a city ordinance or a law. They know who you are and they know where you're coming from, because they know that you're going to say hello all the time, most of the time, and then when there's something going wrong, you can say, okay, listen, you can't play your loud music, you know, here at 2 in the morning. You live in an apartment building with 100 other families that live in it. They need to sleep. But 10 times before that, you were Officer Frank coming in. Hey, how's it going? How you doing? Hey, you know what? I got graffiti on the wall. Can we do anything about that? Absolutely. You know, we'll call DPW and they'll come and fix it. So in my little way, I'm a lieutenant. I'm not a policymaker. In my little world, in my district, that's how I look to try to train my officers to kind of bridge that gap and tell them, listen, and again, I'll end it with this. Treat them, the community, like you want me to treat you as a supervisor.
I think the lieutenant makes a really good point, because as I said earlier, I'm in a pretty unique position, because that's not directly, the position that I'm in is not directly addressed when it comes to community relations. I'm in part of the Special Investigations Division. At one time it was called Internal Affairs, so you know what that means. It was called Internal Affairs. But in that, I'm in the Fugitive Unit, which works with the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force, which means that all of the individuals that I go after are usually already wanted. They're already fugitives. However, during that investigation, you're dealing with the public. And what I do to kind of sort of answer your question is I engage with the community, as the lieutenant said, the way I would want somebody to deal with me. And unfortunately, sometimes you're in a position, because it's a multi-agency task force. So sometimes what winds up happening is that you're working with someone who's not as cordial as he or she should be when dealing with the community. And we all have experienced that. So if it's my investigation or if I'm involved, I become the example. I become the example. Just the other day, we were doing a sweep in Newark, and we were looking for people who may have been involved in a shooting incident, and they may have possibly also been victims. And as we know, in certain communities, there's a no snitch. There's a no snitch clause. We went to this household, and when we were looking for the individual, the mother answered the door. And the mother expressed to us that her son had been killed. in August. And why don't you go out and find the person that killed my son? So a lot of the individuals that were around me, smart, competent, they were lost because they really did not know how to deal with that situation. And what I did, the first thing I did, because she broke down and she started crying, the first thing I did was I hugged that woman. I let her know what this investigation was all about. And I gave her my phone number. And I said that anything that I find out regarding your son, I will make it my business to call you back. I will make it my business to come to your house and engage with you and tell you what happened or tell you what I know. And that's not to say that the individuals I worked with were just, some were, but that's not to say that they didn't have any compassion, but a lot of them did not know how to deal with that situation. And it's up to us, those that know better, those that have an idea of what goes on in these communities. We have to act, and we have to become the example. So when people that are around you, that affects them as well. As a matter of fact, it affects them to the point that if I'm talking to somebody, whether it's somebody in corporate America or whether it's someone who the community deems a thug, there's a degree of respect that we have to give to everyone. There's a degree of respect. So, for instance, we always hear, especially black men, we know that, we always hear, you look like the person that we were looking for. You hear that, and sometimes that's kind of like a segue to talk to people sometimes. But sometimes that's the reality, that the individual that we're looking for may look like the person in the picture. And what I do in that situation, it was funny to people at first, but what I do if it's not that person, if that person had nothing to do with that investigation and we stop them, I shake their hand and I apologize to them. And it may seem like something simple, but that's all people want. People just want you to talk to them like they're human beings in all communities, in all walks of life, in all races. So I think that in the position that I am in, being an investigator, working and being deputized to work in this position, it's my duty, it's my obligation to be the example. And I don't know if that directly answers your question, but I did as good as I could.
Thank you very much. If I may, before I move to the next question, I think that the last point made by Mr. McBride about respect, right? I think this is where it starts and this is where it ends. Police officers, like any other professionals, must behave in a respectful way towards the people they police. And as somebody who looks at police training, again, for over 3 decades, I still don't see enough training hours allocated to respectful behavior. I would like to see a training module titled Respectful Behavior, not just in policing, in any other profession. But since we're dealing with police-community relations, sometimes I think that just this little word, respect, that we so disregard on a daily basis in our interactions with others is probably the key to some of the solutions to the problems that we're discussing today. Okay, anybody else? If not, we will be talking and it's going to be very boring. Yes? Oh, sorry.
My question is more about social media, and we live in a society that has become very reliant on social media. But on the flip side of it, I follow NYPD on Twitter, so I see what you guys are doing with that. How do you feel social media has narrowed the scope on negative police interaction with the community, or positive? I mean, from what I can see, it's mostly negative. You know, we see, for example, the incident that happened earlier this morning. You know, we see police footage on social media, and I feel, especially the youth, we tend to focus more on that than how we see the media is using it or portraying the story. You know, we retweet, we share the stories with each other. You know, we see one side of it. Do you feel that that has negatively impacted police and the community that they're working with?
Like anything else, there's negatives and there's positives. I think overall social media has been a positive. I was one of the first of those trial commanding officers when I was in the 2-6, and we had the Twitter account. And at first everybody was a little leery. Police officers don't like when people shine cameras at them. Because no one wants to, because you could find your faults or mistakes like anybody. But as more as they got used to it, and I got used to it, it turned out to be fun. And we go around the community, and people people like to take pictures with the cops. And you go on these Twitter accounts, and if you haven't, take a look. And you see people from the community, and they're engaging, and we're going to different events. So you know what? If you lived in a particular community, you really didn't know all the things that were going on between the community and the police. And now you realize, well, wait a minute, they have a rock wall. Wait a minute, they have this event going on. The cops are doing this. They have a Christmas party. They're doing. So you were able to open up the eyes of people that live in the community. And sometimes in our life, we're running here from there. We're taking care of our families. And we don't realize the resources that are right around us. So I think that was able to expose it. You know what? And in a good way, it brought accountability to the police departments, because when you see these things, you can't hide from it. You can't hide from when you see a police officer does something wrong and it's on video. You have to face it, and you have to get over it. No one likes to see it. I can tell you, I love policing. I'm a champion of policing, so it hurts my heart when I turn on the TV and I see a cop pull a girl out of her chair and throw her down on the floor and drag her, That hurts my heart. But you know what? That's something we have to get over. It hurts my heart to turn on the TV and I see a police officer fire 10 shots into someone's back that we saw earlier this year. But I got to get, you know what? This is something that we have to face. This is a tool that I have to, when I speak to young police officers coming into the job, we have to address it, if we want to be better, if we want to be better accountable, because the better we are, the better job that we can do. Like I said when I started, if we don't build consensus in the community, we can't get anything done. So I do think that, there have been some positives, there have been some negatives. And, as far as the negatives, sometimes it's only a snapshot. Sometimes it doesn't really tell the whole picture. And you know what? And in policing, we're going to use force. And sometimes the force is justified. But a lot of times those cameras only come on when a police officer is the one using the force. And we don't see a lot of things that precede it. So there is two sides to that story, and being around for a long time, I see those two sides to the stories. But I think overall it's a positive, and it's a tool that if we accept it as police officers can only make us better.
So, all right, a social media question. All right, this is coming from a guy that took 3 tries to sign up to Instagram, okay? And once I did, I forgot the password, and I haven't been able to sign back on and do anything with it, so, all right? But to answer the question, the social media does, the part about when you hear the news, it does narrow that storyline. It just comes in, and to keep going back to what I keep saying, it's like we can do 100 things right, and then that one time you have that misstep or that criminal step, I'll call it like it is, that criminal act, and we're held accountable, and I'm all for it. But there should be both ways. I think my department, it looks like they're trying to get into it. I believe it's a force multiplier. We're able to get information out. All the kids I work with in the Police Athletic League, every one of them is carrying a cell phone, and every one of them is tweeting, and every one of them is vining. Is that what that called? They're doing stuff. I mean, they're constantly sending out. There's a bunch of different stuff out there. So what I try to do is I try to get them involved. And if I need anything done on that, I actually ask an 8-year-old, and he can get my tweets out. And I tell him about practice, or I need to cancel practice. That's how it works. So social media, I think on one end, if you look at it as a supervisor, has created accountability. Easy enough. I think studies have been done easily when they first put the dash cams on, where the officers were apprehensive about it. But then later on, they realized, I'm not going to say that it made me a better cop, but I'm going to say that once I knew I was on camera, I acted appropriately, or I made sure that, I acted appropriately and maybe didn't, act inappropriately or, curse or something like that. So that's my perspective.
I'm in agreement that you have some positives and you have some negatives. One thing I will say, though, is that you've always had bad journalism. You've always heard from communities of color and poor communities that the interaction between the police and that community, that there was always something regarding, violence. It was always regarding being disrespected. That has always existed. And I think that this, to a degree, has closed the divide. And as the lieutenant has said, too, it puts individuals, on their P's and Q's. That when you're dealing with the community, you might want to ease up a little bit when you're talking to people, when you're putting your hands on people and you really don't have to. And granted, this job is frustrating. Let me tell you something. If you're looking for somebody, we had an escape Saturday, and I'm working 8 hours, and I'm sick as a dog, and I don't want to be there. So you're frustrated, But at the same rate, you need to maintain some decorum, because at the end of the day, whether the camera is watching or not, you should not put yourself in the position where you're violating someone. And that's not me speaking from an internal affairs point of view. That's me speaking from a human point of view. And that's me also understanding the history of this country and law enforcement and communities of color. We have to consider that. We have to consider all of those things. And like he said earlier, sometimes it's not pretty. And these are sometimes things that we need to face. Because if we don't face them, we're not going to rectify the problem. So social media, it's okay. It's okay. I don't have a problem with it. Because I'm always trying to be on my P's and Q's anyway. My department, they lay down the hammer. So, whether social media is involved or not, and we need to always kind of carry ourselves from the perspective that if we don't do the right thing, then something can happen. You might lose your job, you lose your pension, you lose your house, you lose everything. So I think it has its good and bad points.
Thank you.
Hi. So my name is Aisha Irfan. I'm with the Office of the Manhattan Borough President. Really want to thank John Jay for hosting this forum. Really want to thank all the members of the force who are here engaging in this really important conversation. So our office for the past year has been talking to Manhattanites across the borough, from East Harlem to the Lower East Side. And there's absolutely excitement around this continued community engagement. One of the questions, though, and when we brought together people, we had community leaders, community board members, executive directors of community-based organizations come into the room with police officers, with young people and members of the community. There just wasn't a lot of information about what this community engagement looks like. So there wasn't actually involvement in the planning process when policies are being planned. It was kind of just, here are things we're implementing, please engage with us as we're implementing. And the second part of that question is, are we engaging communities in officer evaluation processes? Right, so engagement is wonderful and great, but community members were really wondering, do their voices matter when an officer ultimately is getting evaluated and we're moving forward? Thank you.
You want to switch it up a little bit?
I don't even know I could even answer that question, but one thing I will say from hearing you is that the community needs to be more engaged. And I say that because I wanted to call out the fact that I have a fellow alumnus from Johnson C. Smith University who's here, and I got to talk to her. She lives in New York. I live in New Jersey. She plays AK, I plays Alpha, and we've always been friends when I come up here and come to the events and stuff. And she was able to tell me all of the inner. She knows the brother from the New York Police Department, and she knows the inner workings. She knows the positions that these individuals have, and she's constantly engaged. And I think that sometimes that's what's missing, that people don't feel as if they're a part of this process. And what happens is it becomes heavy on those that are involved. And sometimes they give up. And I just think that if people saw her example and they got more involved, that when they're making these policies, because there's somebody that knows. There's somebody that knows. It's just a matter as to whether they're going to say something. They know it's not like it's a sneak attack when these policies are made up. It's not a sneak attack. But it's a matter of the community engaging and getting behind those that they may feel have a voice to address that. So I don't know if I, addressed it, but it kind of like, but he might be able to, these two might be able to answer that. I just had to say that. I had to.
All right, so I'll start out like, In a perfect world, I'm the chief of police, so I'll come in and you're talking about often when I come in or when a policy comes in, you're absolutely right. A thick binder comes down and it says, all right, Lieutenant, this is what we're implementing. And you'll look at it and you'll see that it probably took about 6-7 months, you know, with some private firm that they hired, and they tell you what's wrong with with your district and your community, and go implement it. And then you're walking in and you're absolutely right. You know, you come in and, being a supervisor, you got to grin and look at it and then, be positive about it. In a perfect world, yeah, you're absolutely right. Before you go that way, and I can probably save you hundreds of thousands of dollars if I sat in a community room and I said, okay, folks, what do we need to do here to make our community better? It's simple. Like I said, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, all right? I could tell you that, right off the bat, but I can tell you I do know enough that I can ask that question. And it's simple as asking that question. And in Jersey City, we're not as big as New York. We've got 260,000, people in our city, but we're one of the most culturally diverse cities. At last count, we have something like 85 different cultures in Jersey City. And if you add yuppies, we got 86, okay? They've got their own mindset. But anyway, that being said, I think that, I think you're absolutely right. I think one of the things that we need to switch from is sometimes the matrix and statistics don't say it all. Because how often have you heard where a mayor of a town, of any town, USA, is saying, why are my people telling me that it's not safe here when crime's going down? Read the articles. There's articles out there where mayors are losing elections and police departments are struggling, and they're standing up, and all they got to go to their folks, to their community is like, I don't know what you guys are complaining about. We just dropped crime 15%. All right? There's a lot more to it when you're seeing the community face to face, all right, than statistics. And I think part of it is that if you reverse engineered it, instead of creating it and coming back and saying, okay, here, make it work, go back and say, okay, before we start doing this, let's talk to the folks. And in life, it's how you do it. And in sales, is how you do it. You don't do all the talking. What you do is you listen to the customer. And the community is the customer. And you're providing a service to that community.
Hey, thank you. Great question. Commissioner Brand, when he first took over, he undertook this re-engineering, which basically he looked at every aspect of NYPD and things that we can fix. One of the things he did before they started the re-engineering program is that they did surveys. And they did surveys. They reached out and they called people, just like, other companies do, just to find out what are some of the problems. And they broke it down by borough, by communities, and they men and women. They try to get a feel about some of the issues. So hopefully some people in here answered that phone and they answered some of the questions. But with that information, the positives and the negatives that they had, they started these re-engineering committees, and they were able to break up and look at different facets of NYPD. What can we do better to serve the customer, which is the public? So this is some of the ways that they were looking for outside interaction. But I will say, some of the responsibility I will throw back on the people that's sitting in this room in front of me. Does everyone know that there's a community council meeting? If you community council board in your local precinct, how many people go to their community council meeting? Now I see one hand in the room. Does everyone live in the city? Does everyone live in this city? So I see two hands. So I will say that some of the burden falls on the people. And as a commanding officer that had a precinct, unfortunately, I do love my seniors. If the average age of the people that's coming to community council is 60 years old, it's kind of hard to get a feel of how we're going to help young people if young people are not coming in and expressing. So if you do have issues with a particular police officer, you got to come to this meeting, because the meeting is once a month. If you're not sure where it's at, you go on the website, NYPD website, you call 311, and they'll give you the location. And when you get there, you got that commanding officer there. He can't hide from you. He can't say, I'm not in the office right now. He's right in front of you, and you could throw the questions at him in a public forum, and he has to answer them. he has to try to answer them, or he's going to have to try to get back to you, and you keep pressing him. And you know, hey, you know, those 60-year-olds, they press me a little bit. But, you know, I would love to see the 20-year-olds, the college students. You know, it's a great forum for you young people to start to put into practice what you're learning here. You know, so when you take that step into leadership position, this is a great place to start. You can be on the board. You know, I got my friend Abena here. She's the president of the 32nd Precinct Community Council, and she's been there for a long time. And 32nd Precinct, you know, it's a busy place in Manhattan North. So they take on a lot of issues, a lot of meaningful issues that, you know, that deals specifically with your local precinct. So I am going to throw it out on you. If you live in the confines of the city of New York, find out where you first what precinct you live in, find out when that meeting is held, and become involved and learn and become part of that process. This is what people say all the time. Become part of that process so you can learn the inner workings of city government and what's going on in your local precinct. And that's a great way to get your voice heard.
Thank you. Jama, I think there are a couple of...
Thank you. Just a question. I'm sorry, I came in late, so you may have discussed this already, but and if so, I'm sorry. But I was just wondering if there are any strong feelings about the effect of stop and frisk policies on community policing generally.
Yeah, I knew that question was coming. Stop and frisk. So can you ask that again? I want to make sure I answer it right. Can you give him the microphone? I'm sorry. I just want to make sure I answer it.
Just could you comment? Do you have any strong feelings or any kind of feelings, basically, on about stop and frisk as a policy? And does it interfere with, or is it negative or positive with respect to community policing generally?
Having 22 years on the force, I've worked in a lot of different units. And one of the units that I worked in, as a young sergeant, I worked in the street crimes unit. And I know a lot of people have heard about the street crimes unit. And one of the missions, I worked there in the late 90s with 2 police officers, and we would work in different precincts in and around Brooklyn, wherever there were shooting incidents. And a lot of our jobs was to go out there and try to get those guns off the street. So stop and frisk. And, you know, I thought it was a good tool. You know, I do think it became a tool that was, hey, it worked well here, and like anything else, let's keep doing it. And sometimes when you keep doing it, it takes away what the original mission was. You know, stop and frisk, engaging people in areas where we had shootings and high crime, and trying to see if we can engage the bad guys and take the weapons and the bad people off the street. So, like anything else, if you're just doing it just to do it, or you're doing it because your boss tells you to do it, that becomes a problem. And we should never do policing in any aspect just to do it. It should be a reason why we stop someone, engage someone. You know, policing is not an exact science. You know, we as a police officer, you're given some information, you know, from your bosses or from people in the community. Hey, there's a lot of robberies in and around here. You know, I used to be a transit district commander, and we would have robberies at Winthrop Street, down the block from Kings County. So a lot of the people realized that a lot of workers walked that way. It was desolate to walk from Nostrand Avenue in Winthrop to Kings County, New York Avenue, and they would prey upon the people that was walking there. So people, you know, I'd send my cops out there to my transit station to see if we can catch the bad guys. And part of the tool was stop and frisk and, you know, engaging the people. But we have to engage the right people. We have to take information, and this is where information is critical, find out who the people are, you know, and, you know, no one's going to walk around with a sign on the back, I'm a robber. But we take as much information as we got, and we hopefully try to engage. And once we do that, you know, and if we have stopped someone who we believed we had probable cause, and it turns out we didn't, and the person didn't commit the crime, you know, we do the stop and frisk. And then, like one of the panelists say, we tell them what happened, you know, and if we stop them mistakenly, we apologize for it, and then we move on. I think when you do that, you people understand. I remember I was riding around when I was in the transit district, and I was 12 o'clock in the afternoon. School is in. And I saw a guy in front of the train station, one of my train stations, and I got out with my cop, and I walked over to him. He's like, "Oh, what again? You guys are going to stop me?" And I said, "Well, hold on a second." I said, "Sir, why are you here?" He says, "Well, I'm here waiting for my wife. They're robbing people over here." Well, I said, "That's why I'm here, too, because they're robbing people." And he thought about it, and we kind of found some consensus. He was here because he was going to protect his wife because he knew they were robbing people. And I was here, too, because I'm here to protect everybody. So there was like, yeah, all right, I understand why you guys are here. You know, we talked about it for a minute. We shook hands. You know, like I said, you know, he was sometimes when we stop people, they're not doing anything wrong. But because of the circumstances and the information they have, they could be doing something wrong, and we don't know it. So we have to engage them. And I want to say one last thing before I pass it on. There's a difference between a stop and a frisk. If I stop you and I engage you, and you know you answer the questions and we comfortable, I let you go. There's a difference. I think sometimes we put together that stopping and engaging in conversation with someone and physically taking someone, putting them on the wall and going through their pockets. That's a totally different thing, you know. And I think sometimes, you know, and I tell police officers, you know, make sure, and there has to be a level and a threshold to go into someone's pocket and to check them for a weapon. And we have to make sure of that when we do that as police officers, because that's when we get in trouble. I think if you stop someone and you engage them in conversation, you explain to them why you're stopping them, I think most people are all right with that. It's violating their personal space. I think that's when it becomes the problem.
Thank you. Again, coming from New Jersey and Jersey City, you know, we don't have a stop and frisk policy. We never had. You know, we use different language. You know, if there's calls for service or a high amount of calls for service for disorderly groups or drug complaints or, you know, drug dealing, things like that, you know, from the community, then the district commander may set up a small unit and say, okay, you know, we're going to play a lot of our attention here during certain hours, or maybe during most of the time the calls for service, you know, come in. And just to say, with anything, again, like it's going to be repeated. Policing is not, and policing, you know, in the community is not an exact science. You know, it's complex and it's fluid and it's always moving. So if you stick to one way of doing things and only doing that, you know, you're only going to run into trouble, and, you know, at the end of the day. So that's my best answer that I can give, you know, as far as, you know, trying to answer the stop and frisk.
If I just may emphasize one of the main points here, I think, that pertains to stop and frisk. Not only policing is not a precise science, there's also, and I think you mentioned it, Inspector, that there's a lot of misconceptions out there about police work. And it was always my dream that every police department would be equipped with this machine that would identify all the bad guys and girls in the community, and the police officers would only go after these bad guys and girls, and everybody else would be free from interaction with the police. Unfortunately, that's not the case, and this is something that I think it's very important for the public to embrace this concept of policing being what it is as a profession, not an exact science.
Before I forgot, something just popped into my head, and I, you know, when I talk to people, I say, you know, imagine sometimes if you responded to a scene of someone that was just violated, someone pointed a gun in their face, and they took their possessions, violated that person, and imagine yourself being in that position. What would you remember about that person that did that to you? You're definitely gonna remember that gun, but you might not remember too much what that person looked like. You know, if you can close your eyes and imagine, you know, maybe some people here will put in that position if you grew up in the city. And imagine police officers responding to that scene, and you have someone that's hysterical, rightfully, you know, they saw their lives passing in front of them, and they give you what they can. Now, you're going out there and you're trying to give justice to that person who's crying and has been violated, and you go out into the public with minimum description, but you know someone has a gun. You know, and he seemed to point at someone's face like he was going to use it, and you're responding out there. So there are times when police officers, and you know, a lot of times the descriptions are generical. They're a male. He had a low haircut. He had a hoodie on. You know, fashion trends. Everyone you know, we as young people, we sometimes wear the same thing. This is cool, now everybody wears white T-shirts. This is cool, everybody wears their jeans baggies. Now police officers are flooding that area, and then trying to get that victim's justice, they're going to stop some people. And unfortunately, you know, they're going to stop the wrong people a lot of the times because it's not an exact science. But the biggest thing I try to tell my young police officers is that when things settle down, you have to reinforce to that person you stop why you stopped them. You know, explain to them. I think a lot of people will understand. No one likes being stopped, especially if it's in front of their families or friends. You know, it's a hard thing to take. But if you realize on the other end of that stop, there's a victim that's been terrified, and you can imagine that being your mother or your sister, I think it becomes a little easier to understand why that happened. So.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, panel, for your insights and sharing your experience. It's very helpful in understanding this, the trauma that we're experiencing at this time. I found an article in the New York Times that disturbed me, and I was hoping that you could either agree with the perspective represented or rebut it. The title of the article, it was in the Sunday Times, is FBI Chief Links Eyes on Police to Rise in Crime. This is a theoretical perspective that I find really disturbing, especially in the light of the accountability that you've shared with us and the engagement that is being discussed. Can you please, if you inform me on what this perspective is and whether you agree or can rebut it? It is a perspective that's been brought up to me by a student.
Well, you're talking about the Ferguson effect. So basically, there are some notions by people that because of what happened in Ferguson and Baltimore, that some police officers are becoming more apprehensive about being proactive in policing. Can I tell you, no, that's not happening? No, I'd be lying. I do think that we are human beings as police officers. So when you turn on the TV and you see what's going on, you know, sometimes it makes you a little bit more cautious. I don't think there's any police officer that says, I'm going to walk out the door, and if I see someone robbing somebody, I'm not going to get involved. Because that's a coward, and that someone shouldn't be a police officer. But a lot of policing in the last 20 years has been proactive, taking a set of information and doing the extras. You know what? Maybe I'm going to stop those kids because I know in Morningside Park there's been robberies, and I know a lot of the descriptions have been young kids. So I'm going to stop those kids, and I'm going to engage them. But now another police officer say, I ain't going to stop those kids because now their parents or someone complain or someone takes a picture of me stopping these kids, and now I'm labeled a racist police officer. So why am I even going to waste my time stopping these kids? Because, you know, and that becomes and it does exist. I'm not going to tell you not. You know, personally, I'm going to stop those kids if I think, you know, and I'm going to talk to them, hopefully, and, you know, I'm going to speak to their parents. If the parents come, why'd you stop my kids? Or the community. And people took pictures of me many a times engaging in stuff, like I said. But what I will say, it probably has some effect. And, you know, because of what's going on, police officers are just like anybody else. They want to make sure that they're going to come back alive after their work, but they also want to make sure that they're not going to get in trouble, and they worry about their livelihood too, because you turn on the TV and you see these things are happening. So I will say, yeah, there probably is. Hopefully it's not prevailing among all police officers, and I think it's not, because you turn on and you look at someone like Officer Holder that lost his life. He was running to something. He wasn't standing back and waiting, you know, on a lot of these incidents. And I don't think what people understand and what has not come out in the media, that incident was precipitated by groups of people shooting it out on 102nd Street at 8 o'clock at night when people were coming home. Basically, almost the same thing we had in Brooklyn yesterday. We've had this resurgence where we've had people getting involved in these type of shootings and just disregard for the community. And it's been happening in the daytime and nighttime. So, but once again, You know, it was showed police officers running to an event and not waiting and not trying to find out how this is going to work out for them personally. So I think overall, the majority of cops, it's not going to affect. But it does affect some, yeah, it does.
First, I'm not even going to try to pretend to be, to understand what it's like to be a Ferguson cop or a Baltimore City cop. But I can say that from my experience and my officers, they've gone to calls and they've come back and they'll say they'll go to a call, and whether it's a call where an arrest is being made or if there's a call where there's an ambulance needed, for medical services, and, for every other person, there's a camera, there's a cell phone up, recording them. They're aware of it now. They're there, and I tell them, if you're doing everything right, you have nothing to worry about. If it makes you a better cop, you have nothing to worry about. If you had an issue with foul language and how you interacted with the community, and it fixes it, then put 20 cameras up. I hope, I'll walk up to your call and I'll put my cell phone up to record you. It's there. As far as a rising crime, that's a theory, and I'm not even going to debate with that person who wrote that article. I didn't read it. But as far as in my community, I don't see my officers backing up, for what I do see is they become more aware that what's going on, and the guy, the glass half full kind of guy I am, okay, if it makes you better, then I'm all for it.
I really can't speak to that either, because the unit that I work with and the multi-agencies that I work with, they still do their job. Again, I haven't read it, and I try to read it, a little of everything. I haven't seen that yet. I'm going to look forward to looking at it. But again, it kind of goes back to what I said before, and what the lieutenant also said, is that if you're doing your job, if you're doing what you're supposed to do, then you won't have a problem. I actually had an investigation where we stopped an individual, and he literally took his phone out to ask one of the guys who wasn't the lead investigator with the case, who are you? What agency do you belong to? Real belligerent about it. And I told him, I said, listen, he's not the lead investigator, I am. You can put the camera on me, and I can explain to you why I stopped you, and I can explain to you what's going on. I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with it at all, because if we're doing what we're supposed to, or we're in a situation at the time where I can't give you the information, I can't give you all the information due to the nature of what we're investigating, then that'll be explained later on. But I'm still doing the right thing. And so if I'm brought to court, if I'm brought to the stage, then I'll be able to articulate that at a later time. However, even in that, there's a degree of respect, again, that we should have when we're talking to people. And it should not negate us from doing our job. It should not negate us from doing our job. So, again, I'm going to look at that. I'm going to look and read that. But, again, I kind of agree that I don't think that it stops the majority of officers that know that they are sworn officers that's supposed to do their jobs. I don't think that it would affect the majority.
Hi. I just got a quick question. What are some basic rights a citizen should know during a police interaction? Because I feel like that's something that we're never really taught, like what we can do, what we're not supposed to do, or what's some things that can be like incriminating to ourselves during these interactions.
I actually teach a class to a rites of passage program called Striving Together Equals Progress out of Newark. And I talk to, that's a very good question too. It depends on how you look at that question too. But it's a very good question, because a lot of times when it comes to police civilian interaction, we don't know. A lot of our children don't know what they should be doing. And due to the climate right now between law enforcement and the community, they may do some things that may not be beneficial to them. So it's probably good that we had that communication with the child. Like I tell these children that, you have to give them your name, you have to give them your age, and you really don't have to answer anything else. Again, sometimes it depends on the nature of the investigation. You really don't have to give anything else. But I stress to them that you need to give them your mother's phone number or your father's phone number or your guardian's phone number. Because again, children are not stupid. They see what's going on and they understand what's going on. So sometimes they put themselves in a position that they really shouldn't be in when you're going back and forth with an officer. And some of the officers that they may deal with may not be as nice as me, you know, and they may feel like they can overstep their boundaries. So I think that it makes sense to tell people, and especially children, what they need to do. You need to give them your name. You need to give them at least general information, because I'm not sure about in New York, but I know that you have to tell a person, tell an officer who you are. You have to. You have to tell them who you are. And a lot of times we get that mixed up. I know it varies in different states, but for the most part, you probably need to tell a sworn law enforcement official who you are. You really do. And I think that, again, that we really need to start with our children, because and Rights of Passage program that I worked with, really sharp children. They were sharp, sharp, sharp. But there were some things that they didn't know either. And it would behoove us to make sure that they knew, so they wouldn't come into a situation where things can get kind of crazy.
All right, he hit most of it, you know, all the topics, all this, you know, everything that involves an interaction. You know, I can add is that, you know, if you talked about the juveniles and, you know, you talk about the adults, I guess it depends on, you know, I would say, again, it's complex. It's not as simple as just walking down the street. If I'm walking the beat and I say hello, you know, and you say, I don't have to talk to you or anything like that, but like, okay, I'll move on. If there's an ongoing investigation and like the inspector, you know, had mentioned, you know, you have something that's fluid, you have a robbery that went on, and they give you a generic, you know, description, and we get it all the time, you know, light-colored shirt, dark pants, 5'8", 190 pounds, or I not even that, a little bit tall and athletic. Okay. You walk around Jersey City, you know, on a Saturday afternoon, that's about 90% of the, you know, the males you're going to run into when you're racing down to the area of the call. That's a bit different. That interaction is a bit different. If then we're interacting with you and we're saying, you know, listen, we're, you know, which way you're coming from. We just had a robbery. Again, explain it. Just walking up to a, you know, regular citizen walking down the street doing anything. But if you start explaining it, and sometimes you don't have that luxury. If you had an armed robbery, a weapon was used. Do you see what I'm saying? Is that interaction just doesn't become this police officer in uniform, regular guy just walking down the street saying, hey, give me your name, your address, and show me your ID, and then run in his pockets. That, you know, I can tell you that, you know, it's a lot more detailed than that, and different things are involved in that. And I won't give all the answers, so I'll let the inspector talk.
I think, first of all, you know what? You know, if police officers stop you, you should try to listen to what the police officer says. You should try to comply. Basically, you don't have to really say anything. You know, we have the right to remain silent. But if the police officers do give you instruction, and you know what? And I see incidents, and I watch things on TV, and I see how situations kind of get out of control. You know what? No one likes to be stopped. No one likes their personal space to be intruded. But on the flip side, you know, police officers, they do respond to incidents. And, you know, in doing their investigation, sometimes you can be dragged in, you know. So what I would tell someone is that when you engage with a police officer, try to cooperate with the police officer. You know, of course, if you feel that police officer is doing something disrespectful, if you think someone is doing something, that police officer did something wrong, there is a time and a place to address that. And sometimes we don't take advantage of that time and a place to address that. But I have 2 kids, and the time and the place to address that is not 1 o'clock in the morning when you're the only person, you're there with 5 police officers. You know, things can go wrong. You know, and the most important thing, I think everybody in here, when they talk to themselves and family members, we want you to be all right. And then we're going to deal with whatever grievance happened to you. And I would say that to my son, who is 6, and my daughter, who's 13, starting to feel herself a little bit because she's a teenager now, you know. And I would tell her, you know, we can deal with anything else, but we want you to be all right to deal with anything else. So, you know what, if, you know, a police officer stops you, try to comply. If you feel it's being disrespectful, you don't really have to speak to them. If there's a reason why they feel they're taking you in, you know what? Unless they're hurting you, just comply. You're allowed when you get to the precinct to make a phone call. If you're a minor, they have to reach out to your parents, So these are the things that we can do. But I would never say, and I see young people, and I understand where they're coming from, they go and they feel like I've been violated, I'm not going to let this happen to me. But you got to understand, society is giving police officers that responsibility to go out there and engage in these type of investigations. And sometimes, when they do engage, some people do it wrong. And some cops misuse their authorities, and those ones need to be weeded out and need to be rid of. But there are investigations, like I said, and police officers are responding to things in motion, and sometimes they're all going to stop you and they're going to hold you because there's something else that happened on the other line of that. So yeah, a very great question that you have asked, young lady, and I look into your eyes and I see young people and I understand the frustration sometimes, especially if you live in some of these inner city neighborhoods where there is a lot of police interaction, how you could come up against the police more than other young people might, and how this is a valid question. But I want all the young people to be healthy and strong, and we can work on that later. There's a lot of people, and there's a lot of resources out there if you felt you were wrong by police officers for you to go. But you have to follow up on it. I think a lot of times people get frustrated and then they forget about it. So, there are places like CCRBs, there are other advocacy groups, and there's going to that community council and taking that officer's name and asking that community and asking that precinct commander, Officer Jones did this to me, what are you going to do about it? Sometimes we do mediations between the police officers and the people where we can bring these people together and we can hash out. But the most important thing, if you can, cooperate with the police. If you feel you don't have to say nothing. If they're going to take you in, go with it. Make sure you get your parents to the scene and stuff like that, because we can't do anything if you're not around. All right?
Thank you. You have another question?
Yeah, I have two questions. It's about training. But before I do, please bear with me. I have an accent, so you have to really listen to me carefully. First, I will give you a little scenario, then I will, ask my question. My father was a policeman. He was a correction officer. And he was a World War veteran also. So I know where you're coming from. And I've been, in your shoes a little while. The first thing he tells us in the morning is, don't get in trouble. Stay away from the police. And he was a police officer. So when I came here about 21 years ago. I'm from Staten Island. Every morning there's a gunfire. People die. When I step outside, it's black kids. So I say, wait a minute. Only black kids, but I'm from a neighborhood where there are a mix of them. I've called police so many times myself. A couple of times they came. Sometimes they never show up. You said something about, somebody being shot at the back 10 times. So my first question is there any training given to officers, to shoot people where they can survive instead of, shooting to kill? I ask that because, I know how to handle a weapon myself because I'm a veteran. So I know how to shoot too. And then you said something about stop and frisks. You said cooperate with the police. One thing my dad tells me, you just said it. Give the police your name and your age. Besides that, you don't have to say anything. I've been stopped before. The moment you said, I don't want to be searched, the police have a way of keeping you there for the longest. A couple of times you don't end up, where you want to be on time. So what training is your establishment giving to up-and-coming officers, to prevent that from happening?
Police officer goes to the police academy, and there's a lot of training. There's even before you become a police officer, even before you get to the academy, there's psychological testing. They evaluate you. They look at your background. They look at any incidents of aggression that you might have or you might have shown. And they try to weed people out before they come on, because this job, you deal with a lot of things and it can become frustrating. So we look to see candidates that might not be able to deal with that type of atmosphere. And then in the police academy, you go through 6 months of training and you're still being evaluated. You're still being looked at to see if there's someone that showed an unnatural form of aggression in dealing with people and dealing with each other, taking instructions from supervisors, dealing with the public in general, and there's a lot of scenario training to teach people how to de-escalate a situation, and that's one of the most important things, and that's one of the most important tools that a police officer has on his tool belt, is the ability to de-escalate situations. Remember, you're going into a situation where people are upset. Some people have been wrong. You're dealing with two people and they're yelling at each other and you're trying to get in the middle of it and they barely want to stop to listen to you. And it's your ability to take that temperature down and not be involved and become embroiled in it that's going to tell whether you're going to be a successful police officer or not. So those are some of the things that we do, and we try to and we try to weed out the police officers that are not capable of doing that. Not everyone is capable of doing this job, like any other job. It calls for a particular type of personality, the ability to remove yourself. I tell police officers, when you're coming to the scene, it's not Joe Smith that they're looking at, it's that uniform. And you have to be able to say, when someone is throwing something at you, they're not really throwing something at you, they're throwing something at the uniform and maybe overall society and how they feel society's treated them. And if you're not able to remove that and you internalize things and you take it personally, then there's going to be a problem. So those are the things that we look for when they get out the police academy. It's a 2-year probationary period, and we still evaluate those type of things. So it's an ongoing thing. It can be better, and we look for input from the public on ways that we can do it better. Now, when it comes, I'm going to pass it on after I answer this question because my partner said they probably can answer the other ones. When it comes to this shooting, and I always talk to people, when it comes to shooting, we shoot center mask. Police officers could barely hit, if you go to the range, and just anybody. You got to understand, when you're responding to a scene, your adrenaline is pumping, and you're going to get into a confrontation when you have to pull your weapon. How many people have heard that 9/11 call of the officers holders killing? It's how many people have heard that 1013 call that they put on the news? I think ABC put it out there. So you can imagine going from kissing my wife, arguing about going to an in-law's house on the phone, I'll see you later, hang up the phone, and 2 minutes later you're thinking about, oh my God, I think I'm going to die right now. This guy just fired a bullet at me. Bullets are coming. You're shaking. You're chasing someone. You're pulling out that gun that you used to look at and play with in the mirror when you got out the academy. I'm a cop now, and now you really have to do it. You'll be lucky if you could hit anything with the adrenaline pumping in you and shaking. So when we're trained to shoot center mass because we might only have one opportunity to stop this person. And unfortunately, center mass is where all the vital organs are. We can't shoot for the pinky. We can't shoot for the kneecaps. We can't shoot off the air because it doesn't work that way. Because we got to go where the meat is, where the greatest chance of stopping that person, especially someone that is armed with a firearm. So we teach our officers to shoot center mass, and unfortunately, center mass is where the vital organs are. But you can imagine chasing someone, your adrenaline pumping, you're trying to shoot them in the pinky. It's not going to work. You're trying to shoot them in the kneecap. And even with that, you go to some of these shootings, even if it doesn't involve police, just the kids, they're shooting all over the place because when the adrenaline is pumping, it's hard to focus. So that's why we train to shoot center mass. And unfortunately, that's where you're going to have a lot of the casualties. I'm passing on that.
Thank you. To go to training, policing, what I've learned through the years and what I've observed through the years is that they do their best. They do their best to stay ahead of that learning curve. And with the new technologies coming in, they do their best to evolve. And I'll give you an example. In talking in the past when I did some recruitment for the police department, the old timers informed me that their academy was 7 weeks long. 7 weeks long. What did you learn in 7 weeks? A month and a half, barely 2 months. Then it evolved. When I came on in '95, it was 16 to 18 weeks. You did 16 in the academy, did another 2 weeks, what they call in-service, in-house. Now it's 6 months. Now it's 6 months plus now 3 weeks of in-house where you're learning more self-defense, high-risk motor vehicle stops, things like that. Then you're getting an FTO, a field training officer, for another 3 months. And unlike New York, we have a year you're on probation. So you're looking at they're constantly, evolving. And then now the latest thing, and they're probably going to end up implementing it into the academy, is CIT training, crisis intervention training. Learning how to deal with, emotionally disturbed persons or folks, of that nature. That's gotten big. Now, to be able to, understand suicide by cop calls, which now there's studies being shown that a lot of these calls that folks are going to, a high percentage, upwards of 35%, 40% are potentially suicide by cop. The person may not say, I want to die because, I want to commit suicide and I want you to shoot me. But they're out there, and now we're evolving and trying to train our officers and make them better. So, training is constantly evolving, with the police departments. I believe that, any major police department is trying to, stay ahead of that curve. And as far as shooting to disable, it's just not taught. It's just not taught. If you need to take your weapon out, it's to use deadly force, and that's basically the law.
First, where are you from, sir? You're from Ghana, okay. I look like I'm from Ghana, so I understand, and I feel your pain. With regard to training, I had to actually go to a couple of trainings. I started off as a corrections officer with the New Jersey Department of Corrections. We went there for about 3 months, a little more than 3 months. Then when I went into investigations or internal affairs at the time, we had to go through the basic course for investigators, which also was about 3 months and some time. All those times you had to qualify at the range. Working with the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force, I literally have to go every year to a week training where a lot of the shooting training actually goes on. I qualify twice a year with my own agency because I'm still a part of the New Jersey Department of Corrections. So I'm doing that twice. I'm doing it once with the U.S. Marshals. So even in all of that training, I'm still not perfect when it comes to hitting the target. And that kind of gives you an idea of, when you talk about shooting, because you're trained to stop. They used to say shoot to kill at one time, but now it's shooting to stop. And you're trying to stop that individual. So that's about the gist of, but I hear what you're saying about being stopped and having to deal with that. And another thing that you also can't really train away is people's prejudices. You can't train away people's racism or intra-racism, because there's a lot of that also going on as well. You can't train that away. So you might get into an interaction with an individual that has his own agenda. You can't stop that. How many people are familiar with Ray Caruth? You ever remember that name, Ray Caruth? Ray Caruth went to the NFL and wound up putting a contract on a woman who was pregnant by him. And the reason why I brought him up, because I saw a picture of his son. Beautiful, looks just like him. How would the NFL know that Ray Caruth would be that type of individual? You just don't know. You just don't know. And sometimes we fall into a situation where those individuals that come into this, and they go through all of the training I told you, they may have gone through all of that and may have given off this ray of being an upstanding law enforcement official, but you don't know what's going on in that individual's minds, and it's just the reality of it.
Yeah, I just want you guys to hear something, so very quick. I know it's a little, just to give you guys a little aspect of why it's hard.
Hispanic male, black coat, white pants. He's firing. 85 Central, 85.
Give me the location. What's the location? Give me the location.
He's running towards the white pants, running towards the FDR. Get a unit. FDR Drive, 105 Central.
Let me get a unit to FDR Drive and 105. FDR Drive and 105. 10-4. can I have a unit go to 111 by the FDR northbound for somebody on a bike? Where you at? By 111 and the FDR? What's your location? What's your location? FDR by what? Let me get a unit to FDR 112. Shots fired. How far is it? You... Was there an officer down over there? Where's the location of the officer down?
All right, so just the reason I played that from the incident with Officer Holder is basically the adrenaline pumping, those situations happen. You know, you go from thinking about what I'm going to eat for lunch into this type of situation. It's very hard, and you can tell the emotional, the voice of that officer from to when you can hear the gunshots. So those are the things that I try to get across. You know, it doesn't mean that this absolves police officers from any wrongdoing, but it just gives a picture of how your day could go and how things could transpire and how they could go in policing. And that's all I want young people to understand. It doesn't mean that police officers don't do anything wrong in police, but it's, you know, there's two sides to this story sometimes.
If I may, before we go any further, I've been involved in a study on use of force by police departments in 10 different countries. We have a scenario, a set of progressive scenarios from encounter 1 to encounter 10, which ends up with police officers using their guns. Countries diverse like Canada, Venezuela, Germany, Australia. What's interesting, what we found after years of research, no matter what country we're talking about, police officers at a certain point in all of these countries decided to use their guns. When we run the scenario with the students in classrooms, the students use their guns in encounter number 3. An average for police officers, regardless from which country they come, is 6 or 7. So just to emphasize that the perception is that police officers are, you know, gun-ho. They want to immediately use their guns. An average member of the public, if ran through the progressive scenarios, will pull the trigger 3 steps before an average police officer from 10 different countries.
Good afternoon. Thank you once again for you guys coming, you guys and ladies. Thank you for coming once again. I'm late for class, but it's so juicy to hear this type of stuff sometimes that I risk it, whatever. Now, you've said there's something about the mistakes. Policing, there's mistakes, not an exact science, correct. I agree with that. And it's beautiful that you can say that amongst me, students and staff here. But it seems like there's an us versus them, police culture versus the community, seemingly. Now, I may have my opinions, but seemingly. Philip is the Inspector General, correct? And he came out with a study stating that New York NYPD might be behind on their training practices. Bratton said, what is he talking about? We're the greatest in the world. How could this be? Now, my question is, why do you feel, as an opinion, I can't speak on Jersey or IA, this might be squarely for you. Why do you feel there's such a reluctancy to admit these mistakes, at least in the public eye? Because maybe from the community, you can gain some legitimacy in some of the practices, but when you just brush everything off to the side, it doesn't seem like it's a fair game that we're playing. So can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, that was a great point, young man. What I'd say first, human nature. No one likes to be pointed out as doing something wrong. You know, any group of people, the natural reaction is to get together and, hey, it's us against them. You're actually right. And that is a culture, like in many organizations, and NYPD is not immune from that. We have to break that up. You know, we rely on each other, you know, to support each other. You know, when I step into an RP with someone, you know what, me and him may not like each other, whatever. We can't stand each other. He likes the Mets now, and I'm a Yankees fan. But when we get in that car, we know that, hey, when we go on that job, it's going to be me and you. And sometimes that mentality goes, and when people criticize you, even sometimes when it's justified, we have that human reaction of, that's not right, and we're going to protect each other. And sometimes there are people in the department that feed that. You know, there's some, you know, old-timers, new-timers, whatever you want to call them. They feed that image of, hey, hey, rookie, you know, it's us against the world, man, and everyone's going to attack us. And, you know, if we don't stick up for each other, who's going to stick up for us? And, you know, we have to break that up. So you're absolutely right, you know. I do think we have great training. You know, I didn't agree with everything the new secretary, the one that oversees us, said, but he has some valid points, you know. But I do think, like what the commissioner says, we've tried to be innovative, you know, and we're not stopping, and we're asking young people like yourself to be involved, to get involved, you know. I hope that you'll team up with our community affairs and come out with us and speak to young people, because we need these type of voices. But yeah, you know, there is that tendency, like in every occupation, that, you know, we feel we're attacked, we're going to bunch up and we're going to call back, you know. And it's for us, the true leaders that see it, to say, no, there's a point here. And that's what I try to say to my officers. You know, some of them roll their eyes at me, you know, but I tell them there is a point here. And if we're so blind, or we're so hard fast in our stance that we can't admit that, then it's going to be hard to change it. You know, and, you know, hey, look at me. The young people are looking. You can look at the national politics between Republicans and the Democrats, and that becomes everyone gets in their corner, and Obama can't do anything right, and the Republicans can't do anything right, and then we get into our corner. So these are things that is not only in policing, it's all over.
So to answer that, you know, pride, politics, and egos are the biggest impediments to progress, and so you get that. So to go on what he was saying is that you get that us against, you know, them mentality. You know, it's like we can make fun of each other and talk bad about each other, but once somebody says it, points it out to us, all of a sudden, you know, the wagons are circled, and then we don't become responsive. And again, I go back to it. It goes back to leadership. It goes back to leadership to break that wall, to take those, you know, uncircle those wagons and say, okay, let's take a pause here and see what's going on. They're not looking to dismantle the department. They're not looking to take JCPD off the map and redo it over. They're seeing something from a different perspective that we may not be seeing. So maybe we need to take a step back and maybe, you know, stand on a chair or stand on a table, look at the world, you know, from a different view. And see what's being said. Hey, some of it might be BS. Some of it might be right on point, and you need to take a hard look at it and see if it needs to be implemented.
I have a question. Sorry, I came a little bit late, so I don't know if you addressed this already. But through the academy and all the training that police officers have to undergo, is building community relations part of them, or does that come from within the officers themselves?
Well, we hope that our prospective police officers come with that, you know, and we try to reach out to a diverse pool of people. And if you listen to the new police commissioner, William Brad, he's really trying to diversify the police department, because we understand how important it is to have the different viewpoints and the different groups of people in the police department. But during your 6 months of training, there is curriculums that you have. You have law, you have gym, and you have political science. But you also deal with social science. So social science is where we get to the nitty-gritty of talking about communities, talking about the different types of communities that you're going to have to police as a police officer. So, you know, you could come out the academy and you could find yourself at Greenwich Village, or you could find yourself in the 6-7 East Flatbush, and the different personalities and communities that you're going to have to engage. And for a lot of young people, you know, and especially this job attracted a lot of people that maybe lived in a particular area, a lot of cop families. So you had a lot of people where it was generational. So you had a big Irish following Italian because that's what their parents did, policing. So a lot of the cops came from that, and with that, sometimes maybe they came for their own viewpoints. Now we're having more people, and we're having more diverse police departments, so we're getting more Dominican officers, we're getting more Caribbean officers, we're getting more Muslim officers that come in, and they're bringing that perspective. So we engage in a lot of, and we try to make sure our prospective officers in the academy engage in those type of conversations where we'll talk, and people talk about their backgrounds, where you came from. Oh, my parents came from Central America. What are some of the perceptions about people that come from Central America? We'll talk about politics. We'll talk about, so how do you feel about this particular situation? What are some of the misconceptions about Muslim officers or the Muslim people in general? Are they not speaking up enough about people, terrorists and stuff like that, or we have those type of issues, because that's the place where we can evaluate our officers, but also we can teach our officers that, the communities that you're going to go into, they're diverse. People have different opinions, and it's upon you to be able to embrace those opinions. And you know what? It doesn't necessarily have to be your own opinion, but you have to respect those opinions, and you have to police that way. So whatever your personal opinions are, leave it at the door. Because you know what? To be honest, when a person gets 21 years old, I don't know if you're ever going to be able to change a person's heart, because they grew up a certain way. But we're asking that person to, when you put that badge on you and you swear, the way you police, you have to police to be all-inclusive. And if you can't do that, then you can't be on this job.
So, yes, community policing is incorporated into the training in the academy. It's one of the reasons why, now it's up to 6 months. And even after that, it used to be a week after the academy, you stayed for what they call in-house training, in-service training. And that's up to 3 weeks now. And part of that is community relations and coming in. And one of the things they did in Jersey City, which was simple, but it was powerful, was the first day the rookies graduated on Friday. They gave them the weekend off, and they came in on Monday, and they went right back to the training center. They got to wear their uniforms, all brand new, smell, like new car smell, new cop smell. So they came in, and what they did was that whole day, they didn't talk about police stuff in general. They didn't talk about your gun or your handcuffs and stuff. They brought folks from the community. So 8 o'clock in the morning, here comes the pastor from United Baptist Church, and he's talking to them about what he feels about, first proud that he's got new police officers in the community, and then he talks about, what he'd like to see. And then, you get a school teacher, then you'll get a coach, and you'll get a parent, you'll get, presidents of community organizations coming in throughout the weeks. And when we started talking to them, that kind of set them in the right path, almost like, for 6 months, what they were doing was they were getting certified to carry the gun and badge. They weren't learning to be a police officer. They were getting certified to carry the gun and badge. It takes time to become a police officer, and part of that was as soon as they came in, it kind of took away the edge of what you see on police shows. You got an hour to get that summary in, and so all the action's in an hour, and the crime happens, it's solved, and they're convicted and sentenced all in an hour. Well, it kind of took that edge around, and it kind of showed them that, okay, this is what I'm getting into, and that's some of the feedback we were getting back as far as community relations.
What I will say is that the two agencies that I'm responsible for representing probably can do a better job without going too much into that. A lot of times I'm the designated individual to explain the different sectors of Islam, Leukemia, Wudan, Crips, Bloods. I'm the go-to guy, and that's kind of unfortunate. The positive about that is I think that those individuals that come to this job, they're open to understanding the nuances of those religious organizations, gangs, et cetera, et cetera. The gang thing seems to be juicy to a lot of the new guys coming in, to the rookies. They love to get involved in that. Islam, not so much. Traditional African spirituality, not so much. Because there's an array of things that make us different. And I think that, with those two organizations or those two agencies that I work with, they probably can do a better job without going too much negative.
Oh, hello. My name is Benjamin. Good afternoon, by the way. My question is, sorry, 1 second. It's for the gentleman in the bow tie. You said you was working in the correctional facility in New Jersey. My major, I'm a criminology major, and I'm actually interested in that that field. My question is, what kind of experience did you gain from being a correctional officer? And is there a connection between the type of personalities you should have between being a correctional officer and being an NYPD officer? Since prison is considered a community, in my opinion, and knowing that the inmates have also have feelings.
Very good question. That's a very good question, because you have some county police agencies that it's actually a requirement before coming to the street that you have to work in a jail before coming to the street. So you have to kind of have an understanding of what you're getting into. And like you said, it is a community. When you go to a prison, it is a community. Like I said, I got 20 years in. I've done just about everything under the supervisory level. So there's some things that people do need to understand when you're talking about going into corrections. I can't speak to the effect that has and then becoming an NYPD. I can't really speak to that. But I'll say that it has been an extreme advantage for me once I became an investigator, and even more so when I became a part of the task force. Because there were certain things that I saw and that I understood that most of the officers that I worked with didn't have a clue about. So it's really good. It just so happens that I kind of lucked up and landed in all of those agencies on my way to retirement. But it has definitely been an advantage for me because being from Newark, which is an advantage in itself, and then going into corrections, and then dealing with that and dealing with all of the different attitudes, the different gangs, different religious affiliations, and then coming to the street. And sometimes those individuals that you may be going after and people that are in the community are the same people sometimes that you encountered when they were incarcerated. So that helps you. And it also helps that sometimes when you're going in that door and you're dealing with a family and it just so happens that the individual there recognizes you or remembers you from the prison when you were a corrections officer, sometimes it might depend on how you were. It would go back to what we talked about before. If you were respectful and you were fair and consistent, then that helps you. It helps you tremendously. And it has helped me tremendously in my experiences. So it helped a lot. Again, I can't really speak to the effects to how it would affect you if you became an NYPD officer. But I know that if you worked with the New Jersey Department of Corrections and you became an Essex County sheriff, or you became a Hudson County sheriff officer, that it will really help you. It will enhance you. I think Hudson County's response, they have to work in the jail before they come out to the street. So that really helps. And I'll be honest with you, I really think that when you're in that situation and you're in that environment, that you're forced to have an understanding of the community. Because like you said, inside, they are a part of the community. Yeah, they're incarcerated, they're doing their time or whatever, but they're a part of the community. And so you learn how to deal with them. You learn how to deal with that element, because that same element, trust and believe, you will be dealing with that element once you hit the street. Mos Def said in one of his songs, those guys ain't gonna always be locked up. And you may have to deal with them. And again, it has been extremely helpful for me.
I mean, I would just say that NYPD, we have a great working relationship with all our correctional partners, whether it be New York City Correctional or the different jails throughout the New York City region. And it's a great place because you get a lot of intel, and as we know, a lot of the gang culture, whether it be Latin Kings, Crips, a lot of it manifests itself inside of the correctional walls. That's a lot where a lot of these young kids are recruited when they first go away to jail, and they become, so being able to understand that culture, it gives you a lot of insights of what's going to happen out in the street. So it's a great place to gather intelligence, and I think if you're a sharp correction officer, you're going to be a sharp police officer if that's what happens.
Thank you. Yes.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Brandon Davis. I'm a military police officer. I've been in for 8 years. I've been reserve and active duty. I've been to Iraq and to Guantanamo Bay. And I think the reason for my success in certain situations was because the Army implemented training that I had. It would be annually instead of just initially. So my question is, why doesn't, or correct me if I'm wrong, why does NYPD and Jersey police departments not just have initial training for police officers, but training afterwards, after graduating and doing stuff annually? So sensitivity training and training on how to de-escalate situations and use less than lethal force rather than just when they're going through the academy.
You know, I will take the microphone because I studied police training for over 2 decades. It's money, money, and money. Most of the budget of any police department, around 90%, goes into salaries. Whatever is left has to be divided into equipment and other, necessities. There is very little, if any, money left for training. And I have spoken to police chiefs around the country, around the world. They all tell me the same thing. We want more training. You want to give more training. We realize how important it is. We do not have the resources. And this is why I think this type of conversation is so important, because it's on the community to push and apply pressure on local politicians to allocate more resources for training. No police chief that I know of, and I know many police chiefs and commissioners, would say no to money for training, but unfortunately there isn't any. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I agree with the moderator here, Professor. That is a problem, resources. And, when you speak to a big department like NYPD, 50,000 uniform and civilian personnel, and just the logistics and the money it would take to continuously train those people. Now, we do have training. We do have yearly training. We have firearms qualifications. And you know what? The police commissioner, William Bratton, did realize in his research and that there needed to be more training after some of the incidents that we did have, and he started this 20K program where there is, like you said, training for every uniformed police officers that being currently conducted in the police academy in regards to sensitivity training, getting to know the community, where they've reached out to local leaders, and they've come up with a curriculum. And that curriculum right now, I think they've trained almost half of the police department, and they're doing that. They also came up with another training with dealing with the homeless, because that's become a big problem with the new drug that's out there, K2, I'm sorry, and that's become a problem. So they're training officers, especially in those neighborhoods hard hit, how to deal with people in those type of situations. So there is ongoing training, but the moderator is right. Resources become a big issue, and it's hard. So the community, like she says, has to stand up, and they have to push that. You know what? We want to make sure our officers are truly the finest, and we want to make sure they're getting the training that they need. So, yeah, I definitely agree.
Same here. It is about budgeting. It is about the money. What you try to find is you try to find grants that kind of like, that can cater to training and kind of get that stuff. But when it comes down to budgeting is you get the mandatory, which is your firearms training, and then you get your use of force training, which you do during firearms usually to get it, out of pursuit, policy training and things like that are mandated. Maybe if it's mandated, just throwing it out there, if it was mandated, then money will be found or be created, and then we can talk to the politicians and tell them, listen, now it's mandated. We need, sensitivity training, every 6 months or once a year or every 2 years. Like you mandate sexual harassment training is mandated every 2 years. You got to go through it. Right to know training, we just sent our entire department, and we had to go because we had to comply with OSHA. So, we were forced to because it was mandatory. So if they did things like that and they created like that, then, maybe a lot of more training would stay in hand.
I also agree with the panel. Resources and the funds for those resources, although they do have a lot of free classes that they offer, and sometimes it depends on who the chief selects to take these classes. But again, if it's not mandated, as he said, it's just like a regular job. Sometimes a person just wants to get through. They just want to get through and be able to retire at the end of the day. But again, when it comes to that, when it comes to community relations, then it's probably going to take more money for those resources and for it to be mandated.
So we have time for 2 more questions, and then I would like to ask the panelists to make a short statement, and then Professor Adams will have an announcement. So please.
Good afternoon. My question is, what kind of programs does the police department offer that involves the community?
We have a lot of different. First of all, I want to thank the young man for his service. I apologize, I didn't mention that before. Thank you, young man. But the police department have numerous things. Like I said, for the community, first we have the community council boards. Every precinct has one, and you can get involved in that, and that way you can kind of push some of your concerns, and you can team up with the police department in doing a lot of activities. My friend, I don't know if you want to speak about it, since you're here about what do you guys do, maybe, All right, so you don't want to speak, all right. But all right, here you go. We got a community council person right here.
Okay, I don't want to give them my bye. Hi, my name's Avena Smith. As Inspector Griffith said, I'm the precinct council president for the 32nd Precinct Community Council. The 32nd Precinct is in the Central Harlem area. And as a matter of fact, Inspector Griffith was once the XO there before he was the CO and now the very important person that he is, you see, sitting before you today. But the precinct councils, they've existed, I believe, since about 1943. It's an organization that's under the auspices of the New York City Police Department Community Affairs Bureau. Most police precinct councils, really all of them, they meet anywhere from 8 to 10 months of the year. You can go on the NYPD website and you can just select the precinct in your area or the precinct where you're interested in going to the precinct council meeting, and you can get more information. It should have information as to the day of the month, the time of day, and the location where you're able to go to that precinct council meeting. And basically, our overall mandate is to maintain collaborative working relationships between community and our police officers. The meetings tend to be a standard format, depending on where you're going. At the 32nd Precinct Council meeting, we generally will have a report from someone, a representative from the community liaison area of the district, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. That person will have a presentation information on the stats as it relates to their prosecution of the arrests that are done by that local precinct. You'll also hear from the commanding officer. He will also give you comp stat information as it relates to I believe it's 7 index crimes that they generally go by. But more importantly, it's an opportunity for you as the community person to come out and have a direct opportunity to raise a question, a concern, make a complaint. And the people of Harlem are not shy about doing that in the area where I live. So that's something that does happen often. Maybe sometimes we'll have the benefit of having a special presentation. We have the opportunity to take advantage of asking the police department, can they have someone, for example, like from the gangs unit, to come and maybe give information to the community about the standard things that are going on behavior-wise with gangs. Sometimes parents or grandparents or guardians may not realize that something that they're seeing based on style of dress, maybe markings on a backpack, is indicating that their young person is involved in gang activity. And that's an opportunity for intervention. Not everything always has to end with a perp walk. So the good thing about that is that we have that opportunity for this the social implications that can happen before maybe someone is being locked up or something. And what I'm very proud of, as of lately, we've been having the New York City Law Department Family Court Division has decided to play a very important role on our agenda, which I'm so excited about because one of the representatives, Ms. Jessica Welsh, she comes there and she informs the community that they're happy to go out to other community organizations and offer presentations and let young people know the things that they may do behavior-wise that could be criminal. I didn't know, it's an opportunity to be enlightened, that I believe young people as young as 7 have been prosecuted for crimes, you know, here in New York City courts and everything. But it would go through family court, of course. And we also learned that currently the district attorney, Cy Vance, is working on passing legislation that will remove 16-year-olds being prosecuted as adults, 16 and 17-year-olds. And that's something to look forward to. So it's a good place to start, to come and have that dialogue and see what we can do as community to be more proactive as opposed to reactive. And so I hope you all take an interest in that and get out to your community councils going forward. And I'd just like to acknowledge one of the officers that came from my 32nd precinct, Ayala. I'm happy to see him, and he's been doing a lot of good things through the Community Affairs Bureau and reaching out to the community. They're very excited about doing it. And the NCO program, which is the Neighborhood Community Officers Program, that's going on now through the police department. For many of you who don't know, the officers who are doing that in the pilot areas, such as the 32nd Precinct, we are one of the pilot locations. Every officer is a veteran officer that's participating with the NCO program, and every one of them volunteered to do this. This is work that they voluntarily wanted to do and trying to see the best way that they could serve the community where I live at. So for that, I do say thank you. Okay, sorry if I took up too much time.
I wanted to see what happens when the community gets involved. So just listening to you and the wealth of knowledge, that just lets people know that there is a bridge there, you know, and you could come in and you could be a part. You know, you sound like you're the commissioner. But 2 more programs before I pass the mic on that are very important. Auxiliary program. That's a way for people in the neighborhood, and you see the auxiliaries, and they play a vital part in keeping the community safe. There are eyes and ears, and you see people come and they give of their time. And what was so special about that, and when I talked to the auxiliary officers, when I had the pleasure of being the commanding officer of the 26th Precinct, we had a big auxiliary program. And you saw the eagerness, and these were people that came on their own private time, gave of their time, put on that uniform, and they help patrol the parks, they help patrol parades and activity. And if you ever talk about giving of your time, you know, those people were great. Another great program that we have, cadet program, so you college-minded people in college, you know, it's a program that the NYPD have, and it allows you to work in different precincts or even the headquarters while you go to school, and you get a stipend, so you get some money. So that's always important to college students, and it can help you if you want to come on to the department. You can come right in after you graduate from college, or it helps you just to see the inner working as you move on to whatever other careers you want to do in life. And the last one I think that's dear to my heart is the Explorer program, and that's our young people, our very young people from 11 to 19. And what's great about that program is that it enables our young youth, our very young youth, to come into the precincts, which for a lot of young people is apprehensive. People walk by precincts, they're scared to go in there. But this allows the young people to come in and really know the police officers and build that relationship. And when you build that relationship, 11 and 12-year-olds with police officers, especially your neighborhood police officers, you know, you take those relationships when you're 17 and 18, you know, hey, you know Officer Jones knows you. There's that relationship, it's that bridge that's being built. So that's a great program. So if you have any young brothers or sisters or children, you know, direct them to that program. We also have a youth academy where we take the kids, they go away on trips and different things. So there's a lot of great things going on in the police department. We just need you guys to come and be a part of it. Citizens Police Academy. It's just so many different things. You know, Grandmother's Love program where we deal with grandmothers that are raising kids on their own. There's so many good things going on. We just need you guys to come and be a part of it.
And that, you know, he forgets he's got one of the best police athletic leagues. He's got the largest police athletic league in the nation. And I know this full well. As the director of the Police Athletic League in Jersey City, I've worked closely with their last 2 presidents, Felix Heredia and Alana Sweeney. I've worked with them, and I've actually come in their Safe Streets program during the summer where they close down a street, and they have officers and volunteers out there playing stickball with them and basketball and stuff like that. And you know, I'm trying to be like them. So, coming in with the Jersey City PAL, and we have those programs, and that's where my perspective comes in, is working with the youth. And, we have the Explorer programs, and coming in today, I actually got to exchange with one of my former Explorers, and it makes me proud. You see the outcome, because one of the things I do, or one of the things I truly believe, is that when you become a positive role model for a young kid in the inner city and at-risk youth and things like that, you have the opportunity to change their life path. They may not know it. We may not know it. We may, as officers and 21-year veterans and 22-year veterans, realize, wow, this kid's going down the wrong way. And you kind of like guide them in the right way, and you're using sports as the kind of like the carrot. You're using the law enforcement Explorer program as, that way to be able to mentor them and give them a positive example. See the police officer in a different light, as their coach and as their mentor. And, the kid that was texting me back and forth this morning, he's working for LAPD. He's an LAPD officer right now, and he was talking about a car stop he had last night. And, that to me, he's talking to me, and he's, sir, and he's telling me about this. And, I'm feeling proud. Like I knew him when he was 14 years old. He's still 100 pounds, but, he's, he's a grown man now. So things like that. And that's what I think with, part of policing, they sometimes with budgets, those are some of the first things that get cut. But I think going back into the community, I think working with the youth is extremely important, as working with the seniors with Citizens Academy, because we have that, and the seniors love that. The senior citizen ID cards, we create for them. We do the 2-week academy with them, and they love it. But, again, if we wish to break the cycle, true cycle, we need to get to the root cause and try to get to these kids early. And when we do that, I think that's where, is where we truly get to make a difference.
With the essence of time, I'll just say this really quickly, with all due respect to John Jay College of Criminal Justice. Abena Smith, with her presentation, makes me proud to be an alumnus of Johnson C. Smith University. So she's the one I was talking about earlier with regard to being engaged and understanding what's going on in your community. And I just blush when I see her, because I wish there were more of her. So I don't have to go explaining the different things that go on in the community with regard to the relationship between law enforcement and the community. The only thing I can say about my agency and the agency that I'm detached to is that they do have intern programs. I do know that on both levels, and they've increased the amount, because of course, going back to what we were talking about before, the resources that are available. There are not a lot of resources available, but they're creating more resources with regard to internships.
So one more question, and I guess these were our final statements.
Okay, thank you, panel, for quite an educational, enlightening, and invigorating discussion. A few years ago, there was a police officer working within the New York City Police Department. His name was Schoolcraft, and he caused a big stir. And I wonder if you could tell us what happened to him.
Yeah, Officer Schoolcraft, he was assigned to the 81st Precinct. Basically, he came out and he alleged that his commanding officer at the time was basically fixing the books and under-reporting crime. I think he has since left the job, but he did sue the department. I think he won maybe a claim against the police department. I know the commanding officer was transferred, and there were some changes. They brought in a new commanding officer. So, he's. I don't think he's with the job right now. The legacy of Schoolcraft was that I guess there was in some precincts under reporting of crime, and that is a tragedy, because the only way we're going to fight crime is what we know what's going on. So, I think that's as much as I know that happened to Schoolcraft. All right.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, panelists. It was very interesting, very helpful. Thank you for the members of the public, the members of the community, students. Thank you, Professor Jam Adams. More to come.